Occupying Till He Comes at Southwest Prophecy Ministries.
Welcome, friends. This is Dane Rome, your announcer for today's Last Days Beacon program. Thanks for listening, and thank you for joining us. Just a reminder that these programs are supported by your gifts to this ministry. If you would like to contribute to this ongoing faith ministry, which deals with biblical prophecy and current events, simply go to our website to make your contribution. Our website address is www.swpm.us. You'll find a donate link on the home page. The website address again is www.swpm.us. Thank you for your prayers and support for this faith ministry. And now, let's join Dr. David Schnitker as he talks with L.A. Marzulli about his brand new DVD entitled The Watchman Chronicles.
Well, it is a great joy and privilege to have L.A. Marzulli on the program today and the next 2 weeks to discuss his latest DVD entitled The Watchman Chronicles. Now, I have viewed this film, of course. It's an amazing film that just has a tremendous amount of information that you're not going to hear otherwise. I've had the privilege of interviewing L.A. in recent years, both at Southwest Prophecy Ministries and at a previous ministry as well. And though I don't get to see L.A. very often, I consider him to be a true friend and a friend of this ministry. Well, L.A., welcome to our show today from California.
Well, great to be here as always. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
And how's the weather out there?
Right now it's beautiful. We had rain yesterday, which we usually don't get in May. A little sprinkling, but today it's beautiful. It's about 65 degrees, very sunny, slight breeze, perfect day.
Well, that's great. That is great. Well, for those few who perhaps are not knowledgeable about yourself and your ministry, as we start off today, tell us about yourself, your family, the ministry, and give us your web address also.
It's thewatchmanchronicles.com, thewatchmanchronicles.com, and you can procure the latest film in their own words on UFOs, which we're going to be talking about in a little while. The main site is lamarzulli.net, lamarzulli.net, but if you're interested in the film, www.thewatchmanchronicles.com.
Now tell us, L.A., the subject of UFOs is a verboten subject in many Christian circles. I cannot tell you the first or last time I ever heard a pastor preach on the subject of UFOs. So tell me how you became interested in this subject.
Well, I've always been drawn to this at a very young age. I mean, I saw my first encounter. I've only had two, and the first one was a classic UFO, a disc, a silver disc, in the sky, didn't make a sound, and I watched it for maybe 20 seconds with three other boys. So there were four of us all together watching this thing. We were in Boy Scouts at Camp Horseshoe, Rising Sun, Maryland, and I mean, it was amazing. And that was the first one. Shortly after that, Eric Von Daniken wrote his book, Chariots of the Gods. I read that book and became a believer that we were visited by ancient astronauts thousands of years ago. Now, as a born-again believing Christian, Bible-believing Christian, my paradigm has shifted drastically since those early teenage years. I'm now 66 years old. I've been a Christian 37 years. And, I look at all the same exact places, the same things that Von Daniken covers in his book, the same subjects that Ancient Aliens covers every Friday night, and we agree, something's going on. But we disagree as to who's behind it. I believe it's the fallen angelic host of heaven. They believe it's extraterrestrials from Zeta Reticuli or wherever.
Well, I remember as a youth also reading Von Daniken's book, Chariots of the Gods, I believe is his name.
Right.
And there was a television special. It was quite the rage back in the early 70s in terms of popularizing the view that not only do UFOs exist, but they had a determinative influence on the development of our world. Perhaps piggybacking on that, the research that von Daniken did. Do you think that there are ancient records or indications of UFOs and UFO activities on this planet?
Well, there certainly are. I mean, we see in the petroglyphs in the Southwest, we have the remains of structures all over the United States and the world, which show the handiwork of something that we would be hard-pressed to do in modernity. And what I mean by that is when we look at SWPM in Peru, and by the way, I'll be down there again in June, helping lead a tour with Stephen Quayle and Tim Alberino, and Anselm will also be there. He's an archaeologist, and very excited about the tour. But when you stand in front of SWPM and look at that huge megalithic wall, and some of those stones weigh up to 120, 150 tons, how are they moved and how are they cut? And we can't do those things today. I mean, well, we can, but at what price? And yet this is done thousands of years ago. I believe SWPM in particular is a pre-flood structure, and all that remains of it is the wall. Whatever was there is long gone. The Inca came into it much later and said that when the Spanish conquistadors came, they said, well, who built this wall? And, who built this? And they said, it was here when we got here, the giants built it. And so I've coined a phrase called Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology. And that's what I think we're looking at here.
Well, you're a Bible-believing Christian. You believe the Bible is the recorded Word of God and inerrant, and I do as well. Would you say that there is anything in the Bible that may, in some ways, resemble UFOs or refer to extraterrestrial beings?
Can you say that again, please? I missed that.
Would you say that there are any things in the Bible that you would look at, such as in the Old Testament, some of the imagery that may actually give indication that the writers of the Bible believed that there were what we would call UFOs or extraterrestrial beings of some sort?
I don't see anything in the Bible that points to extraterrestrials as the definition. Now, if in the true sense of the definition, anything that originates off this planet is, in fact, an extraterrestrial. So when we look at the angelic host of heaven interfacing with mankind, in a classic sense, an angel, an angelic being, whether good or fallen, is an extraterrestrial. But that's not how it's used in the vernacular today, or the lexicon today. It's always used as someone from another planet. Whereas in the biblical prophetic narrative, we have angelic visitors, but they tell us where they're from. There's no cat and mouse game. They're very, very specific. Like when Daniel prays and the angel shows up and tells him, hey, I was dispatched the moment you said your prayer, but I was restrained by the prince of Persia. It's very, very definitive where they come from, who these beings are. They come from the throne room. Same thing when the angel Gabriel appears to, what's his name? Come on now, in the temple. John the Baptist's father. Help me out, David. What's his name?
I'm blanking.
Is it Zedekiah? Zechariah? Is it Zechariah? I think it might be Zechariah. It's John the Baptist's father.
Oh, yes. Yes. Right, Zechariah. Yeah, and Elizabeth.
Okay, Zechariah.
Yes.
And the angel tells Zechariah right from the get-go, hey, I come from the throne room. I come from the throne room. I mean, that's just amazing. So here's something to think about, which I've been saying at conferences and other shows that I've been on recently. If we're intellectually honest, we have no idea where we are. We really have no idea what this is or where we are. We are on a blue spinning planet, a little ball, floating someplace in the vastness of space, and we have no idea where this comes from, how it got here, how we got here. Now, of course, we believe in the biblical narrative that Jesus created everything. He spoke everything into existence. I get that, and that's, of course, what I hold on to. All I'm stating is that I look out and I'm absolutely in awe and dumbfounded at what I see, because I realize that nobody, Stephen Hawking included, has any idea of what this is or where we are and how it got here. End of story.
Right. That's quite humbling. And it is a good point that you correctly say, and this was not a trick question, but as I think about it, really there are no examples of UFOs in the Bible because they're all identified.
Exactly.
They're either angels of God or angels of Satan,
Yeah.
but they are identified. So what we're seeing today is, in a sense, a bit different than anything that may have been recorded in the Scripture. Now, in my little research that I have done on UFOs in the past, it appears to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the occurrences of what we identify today as UFOs or extraterrestrials didn't really begin to be, how should we say, common enough or noticeable enough until late in the 1800s. And of course, there's been steady, increase in the volume of that. Am I correct in saying that, as far as history is concerned, that the quote modern UFO experience or observation didn't really begin or pick up until perhaps late in the 1800s?
Well, there have been sightings all throughout history, but nothing like we have today. Specifically, when Israel became a state, the UFO phenomenon right after World War II and the advent of the birth of Israel, that's when things started flying into our hemisphere, as it were. We have the Roswell crash. We have the sightings by Kenneth Arnold, and shortly after that, Roswell, the myriad sightings, the flyby over the Capitol building in Washington in the early 50s, and then the thousands of UFO sightings since. So much so that Fox News ran a special the other day stating that UFOs are now at an all-time high, and some researchers are alarmed by this. Well, I look at all this and I just say that this is the coming great deception. It is about to happen. Disclosure is going to be at some point. It's not a question of if it's ever going to happen. It's just a question of when. And I think we're on the cusp of something. In the film, in their own words, I sit down with Paul McGuire, and Paul is a real smart guy. And McGuire goes, look, disclosure could happen this year. This was in 2016 when I filmed him, but he's pointing to 2017 as he believes that it certainly could happen at any time. And I concur. I think his assessment is right on.
Well, you brought up a point. It's an interesting point. You apparently see a connection between the 1948 signal event, as far as Bible prophecy, that is Israel becoming a nation, and the explosion of UFO appearances. Why do you think do you think there is a causal connection between those two events?
Well, I do. I think that Israel sets the prophetic clock ticking. I mean, Hal Lindsey broached that subject. He was, in some ways, one of the first people ever to really go public with that and stated that the end time prophetic clock is now ticking, and I certainly concur with them. I think that that's exactly what's going on. I mean, Hal's getting up there in years, and I'm 66, so I'm getting up there too. But the bottom line is Hal's been banging that drum since the 60s. Late Great Planet Earth, which I read and almost became a Christian after reading that. I mean, I almost became a Christian, but was too caught up in the Beatles and the New Age and gurus and everything else, and so I didn't get on the bandwagon. Had I been out in California, I'm sure I would have been caught up in the Jesus movement, but that wasn't happening on the East Coast. I mean, it was dead there. The East Coast was completely dead. The Jesus movement sprang from Chuck Smith. People can argue that till the cows come home, but it really, the birth of the Jesus movement in the 60s came from Calvary Chapel, specifically from Pastor Chuck Smith. That's what started, and it just burgeoned from there into, there's like scores and scores and scores of Calvary Chapels, not only over the United States, but all over the world now. So it's become basically another denomination, and that's what happens after 40 years. But in the heyday, in the early days, the Spirit of the living God flowed and moved through that. So how we got onto that, I'm not sure. But the bottom line is that the increase of UFOs is exponential. And if you go back in 1950, there was one sighting reported in December of 1950. Fast forward to, let's say, 2016, last year, it's in the thousands. So it is, the phenomenon's not going away. I get people from all walks of life that come in on the record in their own words. The Watchman Chronicles, UFOs are real. And the series is called the Watchman Chronicles. The first one is and the overarching subtitle is in their own words, because people come on the record in their own words. And David, one of the startling parts of the film is I'm at different conferences asking for a show of hands of people that have actually seen a UFO, had an encounter, and the hands come flying up. And in some cases, they're 20, 25, 30% of the people in the pews has had an encounter, and that's incredible.
And I'll bet if you were to have taken that poll back in the 1950s, you would have been hard-pressed to see anyone, perhaps reticently raising their hand, to admit that they had seen a UFO, because in the old days, and we're not old enough to know what the old days were, you would kind of be considered a bit crazy or delusional if you were to have admitted a UFO sighting. It wasn't something that you would do in respectable society without your, without your sensibilities being questioned. Is that your perception?
Well, that's how things were in the 50s and in the 40s. I mean, and the reason for this was when people started seeing them in the 50s, there was a spin. And the naysayers came on board, the professional debunkers came on board, and anybody who saw one was painted as a kook. I mean, that's how they handled it. And so that is stuck with the media. And when you watch, let's say, Fox News even report something, I show a clip of Gretchen Carlson, who's no longer with Fox. She left for charges of sexual harassment, blah, blah, blah. They're coming out of the woodwork, folks. It's unbelievable. And I wasn't there, so I don't know. But the bottom line is Gretchen Carlson is reading from a teleprompter, and she's talking to another Fox talking head, Trace Gallagher. And she goes, "Hey, Trace, tell us about those little green men, ha, ha, ha." And they just kind of yuck it up like that. And they're told to treat it that way. They're told to treat it lightheartedness. It's all an act. Gretchen's acting, Trace is acting, and no real reporting is ever really done. And then that's called self-disclosure. But then the same news network, Fox News, will run this, and I show this ad too, or this, like a report. It's probably about 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes tops. UFO sightings are on the rise. And it's all facts and figures, with some CGI thrown in there to make it look somewhat interesting. And they show graphs, and then the graph goes up, and, from Fox News reporting, blah, 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 UFOs are, it's just all managed. Chuck Messer would say it's a managed agenda. It is. It's a managed agenda. It's not treated seriously for the most part in this country. However, when the UFO show up, that is the ultimate game changer. And I have wrestled with a passage of Scripture, specifically in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, for decades, talking about the apostasia. Is it falling away or departure? Is it an apostasy or is it rapture? Could it be both? And I've since I have a new saying. It's called, "We go up, they show up. We go up, they come down." I'll say it again.
So it's
go up, they show up.
They show up.
We go up, they come down.
Well, we have been prepared in some ways by Hollywood for that kind of appearance.
Absolutely.
We had a film 20 years ago, Independence Day, recently revised and updated, etc. But it's a repetition of the theme of them showing up and what a crisis it is for humanity. So even though it's relegated to the realm of fiction, Hollywood sometimes prescripts things that may come about in the future. And so speaking of the future, we will have to talk about this in the future. We have so many things that we've just begun to delve into regarding your fascinating film, The Watchman Chronicles. In their own words, UFOs are real. And it's an amazing film. We're going to continue this fascinating discussion on The Watchman Chronicles next week. And now our announcer, Dane Rome, will share with you how you may obtain a copy of this fascinating DVD.
Thank you, Dr. Schnichter. Dear friends, this month we're featuring an excellent DVD entitled The Watchman Chronicles. Prepare to have your sense of reality shattered as L.A. Marzulli rips the cover off of the alarming secret that's been hiding in churches around the world, including your own. Today, people from all walks of life are coming forward and revealing what they've seen and experienced. Moms and dads, grandparents, aviation professionals, executives, and blue-collar workers reveal on this DVD the thing that binds them together, that something bizarre is going on. That thing is their united testimony of "I have seen a UFO." Join L.A. Marzulli as he listens to them tell their stories and encourages pastors and churches to wake up to the events taking place around us. And he offers biblical answers to this challenging problem. You may obtain a copy of the Watchman Chronicles for a gift of $19.95 plus shipping. Simply go to our homepage of our website, www.swpm.us, to find the film. The website again is www.swpm.us. And please join us next week for another Last Days Beacon program brought to you by your Southwest Prophecy Ministries. Until then, this is Dane Rome. Thank you for listening.